It seems like John Morrison has been 100% buried. Now what's going on this week that has changed? Nothing much, because Morrison is still absolutely in the gutter as regards being an in-ring performer who's paid his dues. He's been on the programme for years and years. He's been in main events. He's done all sorts of stuff. But it's not enough for the guy to get him over. And of course this week we saw what was really, I think, the final burial for John Morrison. People tweeting Melina saying that it was her fault. She has a different idea. Apparently she thinks, and I tend to agree with her on this, that it could well have been the fact that this week, Raw, John Morrison was defeated by Christian in a minute and then assaulted by Dolph Ziggler. It really is over now, isn't it?
It's unfortunate for Jomo. It's ups and downs. I mean, I think he was on the right track. I genuinely do, because when he was doing the Batman stuff backstage there for a couple of weeks, obviously he was in somebody's good books. They were giving him the push. He was doing his moonsaults and his flips and his you know what. And he was winning matches and he was on the way to stardom some bit. But it was short-lived. I think Melina certainly put a serious roadblock in his path to stardom. I genuinely think, and I'll go back to this one when Morrison comes to mind these days, is that quote from Vince where he just doesn't think he's a legit man, that why would he let Batista sleep with his missus? I mean, would any man do that if Melina was your missus? I still will go on record to say I think that's the reason why. I think Vince probably just said, look, that's what you're dealing with this guy. So he's not a real man,
I imagine that could be bang on, and it's a shame, because talk about politics working against you. Melina, let's just say it's been said all over the place about that Batista thing. I believe it. It's been in the books, and nobody's really steadfastly denied it. They've kind of admitted it in a way, haven't they? So again, Vince probably changing his mind a bit on Morrison at that point seems quite likely. At first I would have thought it was the size, that it was a problem for him, and then I see Christian getting the World Heavyweight Championship. There's a veteran who managed to take himself out of the burial zone and end up in a place where he got the belt. Now, it might have been a device to get it to Orton and maybe a device to get him heel, but Morrison needs to go heel again. That's where I really like the character. Now maybe we have to go back quite a while to when we initially talked about Morrison. I think we were very, very high on the guy, and even throughout the pay-per-views there was always a Morrison moment. He became the Jeff Hardy who did something daring, did something acrobatic, and in a sense put those matches over when they were boring. So why have they just left him there? Why have they just decided there's nothing for the guy? I can't think of anything else but just what you said there, that it's Melina and that those people on Twitter are right.
Well, we've said many a time, I suppose, as well, that his promos are very forced, and still after all these years he hasn't quite just got the knack of it. And from the outside and from the inside, I'm sure people would probably say the same thing. It's just something about them, or I don't know, I can't even put my finger on just what it is, but it's forced. They're very forced. I don't think it's a size issue, because if you look back when Michaels, I suppose, first won the belt, they were probably around the same size. I think the big difference there is Michaels, I'm sure, would stand over anybody to get what he wanted and did, where Morrison, I think, is probably just too much of a nice guy and too genuine. And maybe Vince said, look, this guy, he's that nice, he's letting Batista get around with his bird, so we can't have him representing the company because everybody will stand over him. So maybe that's what you're dealing with there with old Jomo, I'd say.
I think you're nailing it, and I think the explanation is rooted in something like that. It's got to be backstage. A few months ago there was all that talk about Morrison and Melina being an item again, and that maybe they were causing a bit of backstage hassle. Talk about the Snooki angle at WrestleMania, that in fact it was Melina who maybe was supposed to go in the place of Trish Stratus for that match, and maybe that was another crucial time. I mean, backstage at Mania, you're not wanting to hold Vince up like Warrior did. I mean, it's not the best thing to do. And of course, Warrior, he's not far away from it. He can do some interesting moves and he can work. But a similar-ish look. Now, I think maybe he has sort of grown size-wise a little bit, but not enough. And as you say, it shouldn't be an issue. Shawn Michaels is exactly the point. And it's something I thought about today when thinking about this whole subject, that obviously Morrison has failed to work politically. Michaels kept himself there by constantly, if you like, working everybody, whether it be the bookers, the talent, the audience. Everybody was worked by the clique, and it looks like Morrison didn't really have that support at the end of the day.
Unfortunate for him. Unfortunate for the poor guy. Yeah, there was a couple of rumors that he was going to chuck it all in. Maybe he hit TNA. Who knows where he'll end up? You know, he was quite good back in the days, even with that ECW, well, WWE ECW run. I remember being quite a fan of the heel side of him, and when he was banging on about the Palace of Wisdom and all that stuff. You know, it was good stuff that could have went somewhere if they capitalized on it and maybe ran a few vignettes of some sort. I know we kind of had a couple of ideas that might have worked, but I don't know. They never really paid too much attention to detail with him. I think was the other thing. He was just out there, and he was kind of this and he was that, but he was never completely nailed down. I think he just kind of floated between team mobs, the heel gimmick, the face gimmick, the kind of rock star thing, you know, the Batman stuff. It was never concrete. It was never solid. And if they put a couple of more nails down, I think they would have sorted him out, you know. But not to be the case for poor Jomo.
They certainly did miss the boat, and they missed the boat many times. There were so many times I felt that he was kicking off, that his character was getting those crowds standing on their feet, if you like. They were certainly being worked by the new babyface attention that he got at the beginning, and I think that entrance was always over. But you went back to ECW, and if you track back on all the videos that we've mentioned Morrison here on WrestleDope, you'll find that I think that's what we always said, back to that almost Jim Morrison type character, the guy who really probably would be involved in stuff that, again, isn't PG related. So is that what hurt that character? They might have had plans that were sort of pre-2007 for him, and maybe it ended up being quite lame, and well, look, he's a great athlete, so let's just concentrate on his athletics. That's enough, I think, for half the battle. The other half is having that character that actually means something. Now, you know, the worst moment for me, I think, for Morrison had to have been when he got beaten down by R-Truth. Now, why they let that happen, and why they let that sort of be such a long segment, it's almost like they wanted him buried then.
Yeah, but I think actually the reason for that, now somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think there was something to do with some sort of surgery, and they were writing him off there for a couple of weeks. I could be wrong. If it's the recent one, I could be wrong, but yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, but you know, in fairness though, there was a lot of burials like that with the guy. You know, he really did. He got a bad doing, poor Jomo. He got a bad doing.
So that's John Morrison.
Yeah, Jomo. Yeah, a run with, you know, IC title these days would do him a hell of a lot of good if it ever happens. But yeah, I don't know, maybe a lot of people have just kind of seriously, you know, passed him out on the fast lane there, even Sheamus's and people like that, you know. Yeah, who knows where it goes.
That's the worst part, isn't it? That to be in there for so long and to see guys go ahead of you, and to sort of lose spot all the time as somebody new comes in. Sheamus just went right ahead of him. You're right. He just took the belt. He's not had it since. But why was that faith not in a guy like a Morrison? I have to think that he's been there for either too long or he was there at the wrong time. I feel like if he came in a few years after, he'd be a little bit more fresh now. He'd perhaps only be coming out of the heel thing now, and those last few years might have been spent as that Jim Morrison character. But everything was thrown in the wrong direction, I think, with him. And I think people in the chat room saying a lot of similar comments. Carbon Dioxide said hello, and that Morrison has had some alright matches. He has. He's impressed many a time. To me, he can kind of pull it out of the bag like a Mysterio. Even though I might not be into the character, the match will impress. Sonic says a Morrison could thrive in TNA or Ring of Honor. And Carbon says, I hope when it comes to crunch time, Jomo resigns. Now, we don't want him to resign, really, but he might be forced to.
Well, what I genuinely like to see happen, and they could do it in 2 months, pull him off TV, another beatdown, once and for all, serious beatdown, with someone top tier. I'm talking a Mark Henry. Just take him out. Serious damage, put him through the table, wall of pain, the whole shebang, write him off TV, bring him back 2 months later, drop the whole deal that he has with the slow-mo, Jomo entrance and all that, and full on crank that heel shit up to the neck with a heel female manager. I'm not talking a diva, I'm not talking a worker, strictly manager. I'm talking Sherry Martel deal, as heel as possible, and do carbon copy of the Michaels thing. It'll get him over, I'd say. It's what he needs, and I think maybe Vince would probably take him a little bit more serious, even though it's a storyline, kayfabe or whatever. But to see him work with it, I'm sure he could probably do a decent enough job, and maybe he'll drop that awful forced speak that he comes out with when he's on the mic. Maybe that's Absolutely. The whole thing. He won't have to speak. Let some heel female do the talking for him.
That's where it all fell down, isn't it? That speaking voice. As soon as he gets on that mic, he's almost buried straight away. My favourite John Morrison memory is probably the most hated by fans. You might know what I'm going to say, but it's that time when he took on kayfabe, or at least he managed Kevin Federline. Britney Spears, man, that was an incredible time. You had Nitro with kayfabe taking on John Cena for a New Year Raw. Why I love that, I don't know, but that was a moment where I thought he was then going to transition into John Cena matches. Now, why, if you like, did Punk get there and Nitro or Morrison didn't? I think the comparison between those two is interesting. To me, Punk, he's got personality now, but he certainly didn't have it back in those early days. Now, why is, again, he gone ahead of Nitro? Why is he gone ahead of Morrison is an absolute mystery to me, and I think they really have certainly let the ball down by allowing that to happen. It's a big mistake, because I think Morrison is worth far, far more, and I think he should go on at some point. I'd like to see him as WWE champion. Maybe it's something that is never going to happen. But I think getting back to when I watched it a few years ago and got more into it, he was the character that I look forward to seeing. The team of, if you like, him and Joey Matthews, that was good, and also him with Melina. So I would agree. I think it's time to go back heel, and I think they should do it very, very soon. Or I think there's going to be a big problem, I think, with Morrison.
Yeah, I mean,
so we still have more to talk about here. Go ahead there.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's been a long run for him. It's about 10 years now he's been with him, isn't it?
Yeah.
That long? Or maybe I'm wrong.
I think, I mean, it was tough enough, like 2001, 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking 2006 upwards. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll move on to the next topic.
It could have been. But no, in fact, no. Well, it might have been actually. He could have been just coming in when I just started watching again, but I'm not too clear on that. But let's hope Morrison does better in the future.